A crumpled, grease-stained dollar bill. That was the price tag the most dangerous man in the city put on her dignity. He didn't leave it because he was cheap. He left it because he wanted to watch her break. Most people would have taken the insult, kept their head down, and thanked God they survived a night serving Landon Joyce. But Elena Corves wasn't most people. When she chased him into the pouring rain to throw that dollar back in his face, she didn't just break the rules of the underworld. She started a war that would either destroy her or crown her a queen. This is the story of the waitress who refused to be bought. The air inside the Velvet Room always smelled of expensive cognac, truffle oil, and old money. It was the kind of establishment where the napkins were made of Egyptian cotton, and the silence was heavy, broken only by the clinking of crystal and the hushed whispers of power brokers. For Elena Corves, it was just another stage where she had to perform the role of the invisible servant. Her feet throbbed in her cheap black heels. She had been on them for 12 hours straight, picking up a double shift because the medical bills on her kitchen counter were piling up faster than she could count them. Her younger brother Toby was waiting on a specialist at Mount Sinai, and the insurance company had sent another rejection letter that morning. Table 4 needs a refill on the distinct vintage, the floor manager, a sweaty man named Mr. Henderson, hissed into her ear. And for God's sake, smile, Elena. You look like a funeral procession. Elena forced the corners of her mouth upward, masking the exhaustion that sat deep in her bones. She grabbed the bottle of 1998 Cabernet and moved toward table 4. The atmosphere around that table was different. It felt like a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the room. 3 men sat there, but only one mattered. He sat at the head, leaning back in the leather booth with a predatory grace. He wore a suit that cost more than Elena would make in 5 years, charcoal gray, tailored to perfection against broad shoulders. Landon Joyce. Even in a city as loud as New York, his name was whispered. They called him a legitimate businessman in the papers, but on the streets, everyone knew the Joyce family owned the concrete the city was built on. Lena approached, her hands steady despite the sudden drop in temperature she felt near him. "More wine, sir?" she asked, her voice soft. Landon didn't look up. He was staring at his phone, his thumb scrolling dismissively. "Leave it." "I have to pour it for you, sir. It's house policy to—" "I said, leave it." Landon cut her off. His voice was a low rumble, smooth but dangerous, like a luxury car idling before a race. He finally looked up. His eyes were the color of cold steel, devoid of any warmth. He looked at her, not as a woman or even a human being, but as an annoyance, a fly buzzing near his dinner. "Are you deaf? Or just incompetent?" The table went silent. The other 2 men, thick-necked bodyguards named Rocco and Dante, snickered. Elena felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She set the bottle down on the white tablecloth with a soft thud. "I apologize, sir. Enjoy your evening." She turned to leave, her heart hammering against her ribs. She needed this job. She needed the tips. She couldn't afford to have an ego. Throughout the rest of the meal, Elena was summoned back 3 times. Once because the steak was too room temperature. Once because the water had too much ice. And finally, because Landon dropped his napkin and pointed at it without a word, expecting her to retrieve it from between his polished shoes. She did it all. She swallowed her pride for Toby. Finally, the check came. The bill was $2.400. Landon didn't even look at the total. He threw a black credit card onto the tray. Elena processed it, her hands shaking slightly. A standard tip on a bill like this would cover Toby's medication for 2 months. She prayed, silently begging the universe for a break. She returned with the receipt. Landon signed it with a flourish of a gold pen. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, and looked her up and down one last time with a sneer of pure disdain. Service was adequate. "For a place like this," he muttered to Rocco. They walked out, the heavy oak doors swinging shut behind them. Elena rushed to the table to check the receipt. Her breath hitched. On the line for the tip, there was a single, horizontal slash. 0. But tucked under the edge of the dessert plate was a single dollar bill. It was old, wrinkled, and stained with something brown. It wasn't just cheap, it was a message. You are worth nothing. The humiliation hit her like a physical blow. The other servers were watching. Mr. Henderson was watching. Elena stared at that dollar bill, and something inside her, the dam holding back years of struggle, poverty, and fear, snapped. She grabbed the dollar. "Elena, don't." Sarah, another waitress, whispered, seeing the look in her eyes. "Let it go. He's the Joyce boss." Elena didn't hear her. She marched through the dining room, pushing past the host stand, and burst out the front doors into the rainy New York night. A sleek black limousine was idling at the curb. Rocco was holding the back door open while Landon adjusted his cufflinks, preparing to slide inside. "Hey!" Elena shouted, her voice cracking over the sound of the rain. Landon paused, 1 foot inside the car. He turned slowly, his brow arched in genuine confusion. No one shouted at him. Ever. Elena marched up to him, the rain instantly soaking her uniform, plastering her hair to her face. She looked like a drowned rat standing before a king, but her chin was high. "You forgot something," she said, breathless. Landon looked at her, then at the bodyguard, as if asking, "Is this real?" "Excuse me?" Elena extended her hand. The crumpled, dirty dollar bill sat in her palm. "I don't need your charity," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "And I don't need your pity. If you can't afford to tip properly after a $2,000 meal, maybe you should eat at McDonald's. Keep it. You clearly need it more than I do." Silence stretched across the sidewalk. The valet froze. Rocco's hand went inside his jacket, reaching for a weapon. Landon held up a hand to stop his guard. He stepped back out of the car, the rain darkening the shoulders of his suit. He towered over her, his scent of expensive cologne and rain filling her senses. He took the dollar from her hand. His fingers brushed hers. Warm, rough, shocking. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I don't care who you are," Elena spat back, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "Manners are free, even for people like you." She turned on her heel and walked back toward the restaurant, her legs trembling so hard she thought she might collapse. Landon Joyce stood on the sidewalk, holding the wet dollar bill. For the first time in 10 years, he wasn't thinking about business or territory or enemies. He was watching the girl in the cheap uniform who had just signed her own death warrant. A slow, terrifying smile spread across his face. "Interesting," he whispered. The moment Elena stepped back inside the velvet room, she knew it was over. Mr. Henderson was waiting for her by the coat check, his face a mask of purple rage. He didn't even let her dry off. "Get your things," he spat, spittle flying from his lips. "You are done. Fired. Blacklisted. Mr. Henderson, please." Elena begged, the adrenaline fading, leaving only cold dread. "He insulted me. I just returned his money. I didn't cause a scene inside." "You chased Landon Joyce into the street and screamed at him," Henderson shrieked, drawing stares from the diners. "Do you have a death wish? Better yet, do you want to shut this place down? If he decides to ban this restaurant, we are finished. Get out. Now." "My tips," Elena stammered. "I worked at double the shift pay." "Consider it damages for the reputation you just ruined," Henderson growled, shoving her coat into her chest. "If you're not off the premises in 2 minutes, I'm calling the police." Elena walked out the back door into the alleyway. The rain was heavier now. She leaned against the brick wall and slid down until she hit the wet pavement, burying her face in her hands. No job, no money for Toby's insulin, and she had just antagonized the most powerful crime lord in the city. The walk home to her apartment in Queens took an hour and a half because she couldn't afford the subway fare. Her apartment was a shoebox on the 4th floor of a walk-up that smelled of boiled cabbage and mildew. When she unlocked the door, the sound of coughing greeted her. Toby was on the sofa, wrapped in 3 blankets. He was only 16, but his illness made him look 12. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. "Al?" he rasped. "You're home early." Elena quickly wiped her eyes and forced a bright smile. She couldn't let him know. Not yet. Slow night, Tobes. They sent us home early. She went to the kitchen to prepare him some tea, her hands shaking as she filled the kettle. She opened the fridge. It was almost empty. A carton of milk, 2 eggs, and the last vial of insulin. She stared at the vial. It would last 3 more days. Maybe 4 if she rationed it, which the doctors said never to do. What have I done? She thought, gripping the counter. I let my pride kill my brother. For the next 2 days, Elena hit the pavement. She went to every restaurant, bar, and diner in a 10-block radius. But the word was out. In the hospitality industry, news traveled fast, especially when it involved the Joyce family. Sorry, we're not hiring, a manager at a diner said, not even looking at her resume. We don't need the trouble, sweetheart, a bartender at a dive bar told her bluntly. She had been blacklisted. Henderson had made calls, or worse, Joyce had. By the 3rd evening, Elena was desperate. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at a pile of pawn shop receipts. She had sold her mother's necklace, the only thing she had left of her parents, just to buy groceries. Then there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a tentative knock. It was 3 heavy, authoritative thuds. Elena's heart stopped. She looked at the clock. 10 p.m. No one visited her this late. Elena? Who is it? Toby called from the other room. Stay in bed, Toby, she said, her voice trembling. She grabbed a kitchen knife, hiding it behind the fold of her oversized sweater, and walked to the door. She peered through the peephole. All she saw was black fabric. She cracked the door open, keeping the chain latched. Who is it? Miss Corves, a deep voice rumbled. Through the crack she saw the face of the bodyguard from the restaurant, Rocco. The one who had laughed at her. Go away, she whispered. I don't have anything. If you're here to hurt me because of what I said to your boss, just do it outside. My brother is inside. Rocco didn't blink. Mr. Joyce requests your presence. I'm not going anywhere with you. It wasn't a question, Rocco said. He held up a smartphone. On the screen was a live video feed. Elena squinted at it. Her blood turned to ice. The video showed the interior of a hospital room, a private, luxury suite. In the bed, hooked up to state-of-the-art machines, was a boy sleeping peacefully. That's not Toby, she stammered, confused. Toby is in the other room. No, Rocco said calmly. But the doctors at Mount Sinai say that if your brother doesn't receive the new experimental treatment for his condition within 48 hours, his kidneys will fail. The treatment costs $200,000. Elena gripped the doorframe. Why are you telling me this? Mr. Joyce bought the debt, Rocco said. He owns your brother's medical bills now. All of them. Elena felt the room spin. What? He wants to talk. If you come with me now, the debt is paused. If you refuse, the collection agency, which we also own, seizes everything. And I mean everything. The knife slipped from her sweaty palm and clattered to the floor. She had no choice. She had angered a god, and now he had come to collect his due. Let me say goodbye to my brother, she whispered, defeated. You have 2 minutes. Elena walked back into the living room. She kissed Toby's forehead, smoothing back his damp hair. I have to go out for a bit, Tobes, she said, her voice breaking. A job opportunity came up, night shift. Okay, Elle, he mumbled sleepily. Be safe. I will. She grabbed her coat and walked out the door, leaving the safety of her poverty for the danger of Joyce's world. The black limousine was waiting downstairs. Rocco opened the door. Elena slid into the leather interior. It smelled of that same expensive cologne and danger. Landon Joyce was sitting there, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand. He looked at her, his eyes unreadable in the shadows of the car. "You returned my $1, he said, his voice smooth as velvet wrapped around a blade. "I did," Elena said, trying to stop her knees from knocking together. Landon swirled his drink. "Nobody has ever said no to me, Elena. It made me realize something. You have a spine. A rare quality in this city of rats." He leaned forward, the light from the street lamps illuminating his sharp jawline. "I have a proposition for you. A job." "I'm a waitress," Elena said. "I don't do whatever it is you do." "I don't need a waitress," Landon said. "I need a liar. And judging by the way you stood up to me in the rain, you're a very good actress." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a contract. "Sign this, and your brother gets the treatment, the best doctors, and a private room at Mount Sinai. Refuse, and you can walk home." Elena looked at the paper. The words swam before her eyes. Employment agreement, fiancé, contractual. "You want me to marry you?" she gasped. "Fake marry me," Landon corrected. "For 6 months. I have a business rival, Victor Kale, who is moving in on my territory. He thinks I'm unstable, a loose cannon without family values. I need to appear settled, domestic, and untouchable to the old families in Italy. I need a respectable, innocent wife." He looked her up and down, his gaze clinical yet searing. "You are poor, desperate, and nobody knows who you are. You are perfect." Elena stared at him. "You ruined my life just to offer me a job?" "I tested you," Landon said coldly. "And you passed." He held out the gold pen, the same one he used to sign the receipt that night. "So, Elena Corves, what is your pride worth now? $1 or your brother's life?" Elena looked at the pen. She looked at the man who represented everything she hated: arrogance, wealth, cruelty. She took the pen. "I'll do it," she whispered. "But if you touch me, I'll kill you." Landon laughed, a dark, low sound. "Don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. This is business. Strictly business." But as the car pulled away into the night, carrying her toward a world of blood and gold, Elena knew one thing. Nothing with Landon Joyce would ever be just business. The penthouse at the top of the Millennium Tower didn't feel like a home. It felt like a fortress made of glass and marble. The elevator door slid open with a whisper, revealing a sprawling living space that overlooked the entire glittering skyline of Manhattan. It was beautiful, cold, and utterly terrifying. Elena stepped out, clutching her worn canvas duffel bag. It contained everything she owned. 3 pairs of jeans, some T-shirts, her uniform, and a framed photo of her and Toby from a carnival 5 years ago. Against the backdrop of Italian leather sofas and abstract art that probably cost more than her entire building in Queens, she felt like an intruder, a stain on a pristine white sheet. "Rocco will show you to your quarters," Landon said, not even looking back at her as he walked toward a massive liquor cabinet. He poured himself a drink, his movements sharp and precise. "You have 1 hour to settle in. Then the work begins." "Work?" Elena asked, her voice echoing in the cavernous room. "I thought I was just supposed to stand next to you and smile." Landon turned, the ice in his glass clinking. "If you think being Mrs. Landon Joyce is about standing and smiling, you won't survive the week. You are walking into a shark tank, Elena. If you bleed, even a little, you will be eaten alive. And right now," he looked at her frayed sneakers, "you are bleeding profusely." He snapped his fingers. A side door opened, and a woman with sharp red lipstick and a tablet walked in. She wore a headset and carried an air of frantic efficiency. "This is Sasha," Landon said. "She will erase Elena Corves." "Erase me?" Elena took a step back. Sasha didn't offer a handshake. She walked around Elena, tapping on her tablet, critiquing her like she was a piece of livestock. Hair is dry, split ends. Skin is dehydrated. Malnutrition, likely. Posture is defensive. Wardrobe is tragic. We have a lot of work to do before the gala tomorrow night. Tomorrow? Elena choked out. I can't learn to be a fake wife by tomorrow. You don't have a choice, Landon said, taking a sip of his whiskey. Victor Kale is making a move on the shipping lanes in the harbor. I need to solidify my alliances at the governor's ball. You will be on my arm. You will be radiant. And you will look at me like I am the only man in the world. For the next 12 hours, Elena was poked, prodded, and polished. She was waxed, scrubbed, and massaged until her skin felt raw. Sasha's team of stylists descended upon the guest suite, which was larger than Elena's entire apartment, and turned it into a war room of beauty. They dyed her hair from a dull, mousy brown to a rich, glossy chestnut that caught the light. They applied creams that cost $500 an ounce. They fitted her into dresses that felt like second skins. But the hardest part wasn't the physical change, it was the psychological one. Landon entered the room later that evening. Elena was standing on a pedestal while a tailor pinned the hem of a silver silk gown. "Leave us," Landon commanded. The stylists vanished instantly. Landon circled the pedestal. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the restaurant. The silk clung to her curves, the color bringing out the green flecks in her eyes. For a split second his mask slipped, revealing a flash of something heat-like, but he clamped it down immediately. "You look expensive," he said dryly. "I feel like a doll," Elena replied, fighting the urge to cross her arms. "Is this what you wanted? A trophy?" "I want a shield," Landon corrected. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Listen to me closely, Elena. The people we will meet tomorrow, they are wolves. They will smile at you, compliment you, and try to find your weak spot. If they find out you are a waitress from Queens, they will use you to get to me. They will kidnap you, torture you, or kill you to send a message." Elena swallowed hard, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. "You said I'd be safe." "You are safe as long as you play the part," Landon said. "Your backstory is this. You are Elena Vance, daughter of a deceased oil tycoon from Texas. You were educated in Switzerland. You met me at an art auction in Milan. You are bored by money because you have always had it." "I've never been to Texas or Switzerland," Elena whispered. "Lie," Landon said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Lying is just acting with higher stakes. And for God's sake, stop looking at the floor. Poor people look at their feet to avoid trouble. Powerful people look everyone in the eye, because they are the trouble." He reached out, placing 2 fingers under her chin, forcing her head up. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through her. His skin was rough, calloused, the hands of a man who fought, not just a man who signed checks. "Chin up, tesoro," he murmured, using an Italian endearment that sounded like a curse. "You hate me. I know that. Use that fire. But channel it. Tonight, you are not the girl who needs a tip. You are the woman who owns the room." He dropped his hand and walked to the door. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we go to war." Elena stood alone in the silence, wearing a $10,000 dress, trembling. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The woman staring back wasn't Elena the waitress. She looked dangerous. She looked cold. She touched the glass. "For Toby," she whispered. The governor's annual charity ball was held at the Plaza Hotel. The grand ballroom was a sea of tuxedos, diamonds, and corruption masked as philanthropy. As Landon's Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the red carpet, the flashes of the paparazzi cameras exploded like lightning. Inside the car, Elena felt like she couldn't breathe. The corset of her emerald green gown was tight, restricting her lungs. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Breathe," Landon commanded. He was sitting next to her, looking devastating in a midnight blue tuxedo. He reached over and took her hand. His grip was firm, grounding. If you hyperventilate, the press will say you're pregnant or on drugs. Neither is good for business. I can't do this, Elena panicked. I'm going to trip. I'm going to say the wrong thing. Look at me. Landon squeezed her hand hard, almost to the point of pain. It worked. It snapped her focus to him. You chased a Mafia don into the rain over a dollar bill. You have more courage in your little finger than everyone in that ballroom combined. You are with me. No one touches what is mine. The driver opened the door. Showtime, Landon whispered. They stepped out. The noise was deafening. Reporters shouted Landon's name. Mr. Joyce! Who is the mystery woman? Is it true you're merging with the Kale Syndicate? Landon ignored them all. He placed his hand on the small of Elena's back. A possessive, protective gesture that sent heat spiraling up her spine and guided her up the stairs. He moved with a lethal grace, parting the crowd like the Red Sea. Inside, the ballroom was dripping with gold leaf and crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Elena kept her chin up, mimicking the arrogance she had seen in Landon's eyes. She accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter but didn't drink it, just as instructed. Don't get drunk, Landon had warned. Loose lips sink ships, and in my world they get throats slit. They circulated the room. Landon introduced her to judges, senators, and CEOs. Elena played her part. She laughed at their unfunny jokes, dropped the fake details about her time in Switzerland, and clung to Landon's arm as if he were the sun and she was a planet in orbit. She was surprised to find that she was good at it. The years of waiting tables had taught her how to read people, how to mirror their energy, how to be what they wanted her to be. You're doing well, Landon murmured in her ear as they moved away from a boring conversation with the police commissioner. I'm almost impressed. Don't strain yourself, Elena muttered back, smiling brightly for the room. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A man was walking toward them. He was shorter than Landon, with slicked-back blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach his shark-like eyes. He was flanked by two large men who looked more like military contractors than bodyguards. Victor Kale. Landon's muscles tensed under his suit jacket. Elena felt him shift from socialite to predator. Landon! Victor boomed, spreading his arms wide. I didn't think you'd show. I heard rumors you were having cash flow problems. Victor. Landon nodded, his voice bored. You hear a lot of things. Most of them are the voices in your head. Victor laughed, a sharp, barking sound. His eyes slid to Elena. He looked her up and down, lingering on her chest in a way that made her want to shower. And who is this exquisite creature? Victor asked, stepping too close. I didn't know you had a taste for new acquisitions. This is my fiancé, Elena, Landon said, his voice dropping an octave. Elena, this is Victor Kale. He manages waste disposal. It was a subtle dig, calling a rival mob boss a garbage man, but Victor's smile didn't falter. He reached out and took Elena's hand before she could pull away, bringing it to his lips. His lips were wet. Charmed, Victor said. He didn't let go of her hand. He squeezed it, his thumb pressing hard into her knuckles. You look familiar, my dear. Have we met? Perhaps downtown? Maybe at the Velvet Room? Elena's blood ran cold. The Velvet Room. He knew she was a waitress. I don't think so, Elena said, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her throat. I rarely go downtown. It's so gritty. Victor chuckled, finally releasing her hand. Of course. My mistake. You just remind me of someone. A working girl. Someone struggling to pay, let's say, medical bills? The threat was clear. He knew about Toby. Elena froze. If Kale knew about Toby, her brother wasn't safe. The hospital wasn't safe. Landon stepped forward, placing his body partially between Victor and Elena. The air between the two men crackled with violence. "Careful, Victor," Landon said softly. "You're boring my fiancée, and when she gets bored, I get irritable." "Just making conversation." Victor held up his hands in mock surrender. "Enjoy the party, Landon. I hear the desserts are to die for." Victor winked at Elena and disappeared into the crowd. As soon as he was gone, Elena grabbed Landon's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "He knows!" she hissed. "Landon, he knows about Toby. He mentioned the medical bills." Landon's face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were burning with a cold fury. "I heard! You said Toby was safe!" Elena's voice rose, cracking. "You promised!" "Keep your voice down," Landon commanded, pulling her toward the balcony doors. He dragged her out into the cool night air, away from the prying eyes of the guests. He pushed her against the stone railing, not roughly, but with urgency. The city lights blurred behind him. "Listen to me," Landon said, gripping her shoulders. "Cale is bluffing. He suspects, but he doesn't know for sure. If he knew where Toby was, he would have used it already as leverage to make me concede the port." He said, "The Velvet Room." Elena was shaking. "He knows who I am. He knows you were a waitress. He's trying to rattle you. He wants you to break, so I look weak," Landon said in tense conviction. "Are you going to let him win? Are you going to let that piece of filth threaten your family?" I don't know what to do," Elena sobbed, the facade crumbling. "I'm just a waitress, Landon. I'm not like you. I can't play these games with people's lives." Landon stared at her. The moonlight caught the tears on her cheeks. For a moment, the ruthlessness vanished. He looked at her not as a tool, but as a woman who was terrified for the person she loved most. It was a feeling Landon had forgotten, the terror of having something to lose. He raised his hand. Elena flinched, expecting a strike. Instead, Landon's thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek. His touch was surprisingly gentle. "You are not just a waitress," he said, his voice low and rough. "You are the only person in this city brave enough to stand up to me. Do you think I picked you just because you were desperate? No, I picked you because you are a fighter." He leaned in closer. His lips were inches from hers. She could smell the whiskey and danger on his breath. "I will put guards on Toby's room. Navy SEALs. No one gets in or out without my permission. I swear it." Elena looked into his steel-gray eyes. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to run. But in that moment, standing on the balcony with the monster who had bought her life, she felt safer than she had in years. "Do you trust me?" Landon asked. "No," Elena whispered honestly. Landon smirked. "Smart girl." Suddenly, the glass door to the balcony shattered. A single gunshot rang out, echoing across the terrace. Landon moved faster than humanly possible. He shoved Elena down, covering her body with his own as the marble railing above her head exploded into dust. "Stay down," he roared, pulling a gun from his waistband. A gun she hadn't even known he was carrying. The gala had just turned into a war zone. And Elena was right in the middle of the crossfire. The world was a blur of shattered glass and screaming sirens. Landon hauled Elena off the floor, his grip like iron on her bicep. "Move!" he roared, firing 2 shots blindly over the balcony railing to suppress the sniper. They sprinted through the panicked crowd. The ballroom was pandemonium. Guests trampling each other, diamonds scattering on the floor like common gravel. Landon didn't look back. He navigated the chaos with the terrifying efficiency of a man who had lived in war zones his entire life. They burst through the kitchen doors, startling the chefs. Landon kicked the back exit open, and the humid night air hit them. A nondescript gray sedan was waiting there, not the Rolls-Royce. "Get in." Landon shoved her into the passenger seat and vaulted into the driver's side. He gunned the engine, the tires screeching as they peeled out of the alleyway, narrowly missing a dumpster. "Where are we going?" Elena cried, her hands trembling as she clutched the seatbelt. Where is Rocco? Where is the security? Compromised. Landon gritted out, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror. Someone gave up our position. They knew exactly which balcony door we'd be at. If we go back to the penthouse, we're dead. He drove like a madman, weaving through the New York traffic, running red lights. He didn't slow down until the city skyline was a distant glow in the rearview mirror, and the streetlights were replaced by the towering pines of the Hudson Valley. 2 hours later, they turned down an unmarked gravel road. The car crunched over stones, coming to a halt in front of a brutalist concrete cabin hidden deep in the woods. "Get out," Landon said. His voice was strained. As he stepped out of the car, his legs buckled. "Landon!" Elena scrambled out and ran to his side. Under the harsh glare of the car's headlights, she saw it. The entire left side of his white dress shirt was soaked in crimson. "You're shot," she gasped, horror flooding her veins. "Grazed." Landon wheezed, leaning heavily on the car hood. "Ribs. Hurt like hell, but didn't hit anything vital. Help me inside." Elena, who weighed half of what he did, wedged her shoulder under his arm. Together, they stumbled up the steps. Landon punched a code into the keypad, and the heavy steel door hissed open. The interior was sparse. Weapons on the walls, a medical station, canned food. A bunker disguised as a home. Landon collapsed onto a leather sofa, groaning as he clutched his side. "I need the kit." He pointed to a metal box on the wall. "Vodka. Needle." Lena's hands were shaking, but adrenaline sharpened her focus. She grabbed the first aid kit and a bottle of vodka from the shelf. She knelt beside him. "This is going to hurt," she whispered, tearing his shirt open. The wound was an ugly gash along his ribs. It was deep, but the bullet had passed through. "Do it." Landon gritted his teeth, his head thrown back, sweat beading on his forehead. Elena poured the vodka over the wound. Landon hissed, his muscles seizing, but he didn't cry out. With trembling fingers, she threaded the needle. "Talk to me," Elena said, trying to distract him as she pierced his skin. "Distract yourself. Tell me why you left that dollar tip." Landon let out a dry, pained laugh. "You're still on that?" "Yes. I'm sewing your flesh together. I think I deserve an answer." Landon looked at her. His eyes were hazy with pain, but clear with intensity. "I wanted to see if you would break. Everyone in my life. They take the money and they smile. They thank me for the scraps. I wanted to see if there was anyone left in this city with a soul." "So you humiliated me to test my soul?" Elena tied off the first stitch. "I'm a bad man, Elena. I don't do nice things." He flinched as she tightened the thread. "But when you ran out into the rain, when you threw it back, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were the only person dangerous enough to be my wife." Elena finished the last stitch and taped the gauze over the wound. She sat back on her heels, her hands covered in his blood. "You're crazy," she whispered. "And you?" Landon reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, leaving a smear of his own blood on her skin, "are the most magnificent thing I have ever seen." The air in the room shifted. The danger, the adrenaline, the isolation, it all coalesced into a magnetic pull. Landon pulled her down. Elena didn't resist. She collapsed against his uninjured side, burying her face in his neck. He smelled of gunpowder, blood, and rain. "We're safe here," he murmured, his lips brushing her hair. "The walls are reinforced steel. No one knows this place exists, except me and my second-in-command." "Who is your second-in-command?" Elena asked sleepily, the exhaustion finally overtaking her. "Dante," Landon said. "He's bringing supplies in the morning." Elena froze. A memory flashed in her mind. At the restaurant, the first night. The bodyguard who had snickered. Dante. And tonight, at the gala, she had seen something. Just before the shot was fired, she had seen a man in a tuxedo stepping away from the balcony, speaking into his wrist. It had looked like Dante. "Landon," she whispered, pulling back to look at him. "Are you sure you can trust Dante?" "With my life," Landon said, his eyes closing. He's been with me since we were kids. Go to sleep, Elena. I'll keep watch. Elena lay her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. But she didn't sleep. A cold knot of dread was tightening in her stomach. She knew, with a woman's intuition, that the walls of this safe house weren't as thick as Landon thought. The morning sun filtered through the bulletproof glass, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Elena woke up with a start. The space beside her on the sofa was empty. Landon? She stood up, her joints stiff. The cabin was silent. She walked into the small kitchen area. Landon was standing by the window, peering out through the blinds. He had changed into a fresh black t-shirt, the bandages visible underneath. He was holding a satellite phone. "Yeah, good," Landon was saying into the phone. "Bring the car around. We need extraction." He hung up and turned to Elena. "Dante is 10 minutes out. He's bringing a clean car. We're going to move you to a private airstrip. I'm sending you and Toby to Italy until this is over." "Italy?" Elena blinked. "What about you?" "I'm staying." Landon's face hardened. "Someone tried to kill me." "Someone tried to kill you. I'm going to burn Victor Kale's empire to the ground, brick by brick." "Landon, wait." Elena stepped forward. "About Dante." "Stop." Landon held up a hand. "I know you're scared. You're looking for enemies everywhere. But Dante is family. He took a bullet for my father. He's not the leak." Elena bit her lip. She wanted to believe him. Landon was the expert, the crime boss. She was just a waitress. What did she know? 10 minutes later, the sound of tires on gravel announced Dante's arrival. Landon unlocked the heavy steel door. Dante walked in, carrying a large duffel bag. He was a massive man with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow. "Boss." Dante nodded, his face grim. "You look like hell." "I've had better nights," Landon grimaced, clutching his side. "Is the perimeter clear?" "Clean as a whistle," Dante said. He dropped the bag on the table. "I brought ammo, cash, and new passports." Landon moved to the table to inspect the gear. "Good work. Get the car ready. We leave in 5. "Actually," Dante said, his voice changing. It lost the deferential tone and took on a cold, flat edge. "We're not going anywhere." Landon paused, his hand hovering over a stack of cash. He turned around slowly. Dante was holding a gun, a silenced 9mm, pointed directly at Landon's chest. "Dante?" Landon's voice was dangerously quiet. "Put that down." "I can't do that, Landon," Dante said, a flicker of regret in his eyes, quickly replaced by greed. "Kale made an offer. A seat at the high table. And $10 million in an offshore account. You know how the business is. It's nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" Landon laughed, a dark, terrifying sound. "You held my mother's casket. You ate at my table." "And I picked up your scraps!" Dante shouted, his composure cracking. "Just like her." He pointed the gun at Elena. "Always the bodyguard, never the boss. I'm done serving." Elena backed away until her spine hit the kitchen counter. Her hand brushed against something cold, a heavy cast-iron skillet sitting on the drying rack. "Victor is on his way," Dante sneered. "He wants the girl alive. He wants to have some fun before he finishes the job. You, however, you die now." Dante tightened his finger on the trigger. Landon was injured. He was 5 feet away. He couldn't move fast enough. But Elena could. In the split second before Dante fired, Elena didn't scream. She didn't hide. She grabbed the cast-iron skillet with both hands and swung it with every ounce of rage she had suppressed for years. Rage at the customers who belittled her. Rage at the poverty. Rage at the men who thought she was weak. She hurled the skillet like a discus. It spiraled through the air and smashed into the side of Dante's head with a sickening crunch. Dante's aim jerked wide. The gun went off. PFFT. And the bullet shattered a vase behind Landon. Dante stumbled sideways, dazed, blood pouring from his ear. "Now!" Elena screamed. Landon didn't hesitate. Despite his injury, he lunged forward like a panther. He tackled Dante, slamming him into the floor. The two men rolled, knocking over the table. Dante was bigger and uninjured, but Landon was fighting with the fury of a betrayed king. Landon headbutted Dante, shattering the traitor's nose. Dante roared and drove a knee into Landon's wounded ribs. Landon cried out, his face going white as fresh blood bloomed on his shirt. His grip loosened. Dante scrambled on top of him, reaching for the gun that had slid across the floor. His fingers brushed the metal. "No!" Elena grabbed a steak knife from the counter. She leaped onto Dante's back. She didn't know how to fight, but she knew how to protect her family. And somehow, in the last 24 hours, Landon had become family. She jammed the knife downward. Dante howled and thrashed, throwing Elena off. She hit the wall hard, the breath knocked out of her. Dante stood up, the knife sticking out of his shoulder. He looked like a demon, blood masking his face. He raised the gun toward Elena. "You little bitch!" he spat. Bang! The sound was deafening in the small room. Elena flinched, waiting for the pain. But it was Dante who stumbled. A dark hole appeared in the center of his forehead. He looked at Elena with wide, confused eyes, and then collapsed backward, dead before he hit the ground. Elena looked past him. Landon was propped up on one elbow, his own gun, the one he had hidden in his boot, smoking in his hand. The room fell into a ringing silence. Landon dropped the gun and fell back onto the floor, breathing heavily. Elena crawled over to him, avoiding the spreading pool of Dante's blood. "Landon," she sobbed, checking his bandages. They were soaked through. "I told you," Landon gasped, a bloody grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I told you, you were dangerous." "Shut up," she cried, tearing a strip from her dress to press against his side. "We have to move," Landon rasped, struggling to sit up. "He said Cale is coming. They heard the shot. They'll be here in minutes." "You can't walk," Elena said. "Then drag me," Landon said fiercely. "Because if they find us here, they will peel the skin from our bones." Elena helped him stand. He was dead weight. They stumbled out of the cabin into the bright, indifferent sunlight. But as they reached the car Dante had arrived in, a black SUV blocked the end of the driveway. Then another. And another. Men in tactical gear poured out, surrounding the cabin. In the center of them stood Victor Cale, looking fresh and rested in a cream-colored suit. "Bravo!" Cale clapped his hands slowly. What a performance! Truly. Elena and Landon froze. They were outgunned, outmanned, and trapped. Cale walked forward, stepping over the gravel. He stopped 10 feet away. "Landon, you look terrible," Cale smirked. "And Elena, my dear, you look like you need a new job." He signaled to his men. "Kill him," Cale said boredly, pointing at Landon, "and put her in my car. I have a long drive back to the city, and I need entertainment." Elena gripped Landon's hand. This was it. The end. But Landon wasn't looking at Cale. He was looking at the sky. "Do you hear that?" Landon whispered. Elena frowned. A low, thrumming sound was vibrating in the air. It grew louder, a rhythmic THWUP, THWUP, THWUP that shook the tops of the pine trees. Cale looked up, his smile faltering. "What is that?" "I told you, Victor," Landon said, his voice gaining strength. "I have Navy SEALs watching my assets. You just made a mistake." "What mistake?" Cale shouted over the rising noise. "You assumed I was the only monster in the woods." Suddenly, 3 black helicopters crested the tree line, banking sharp and low. The side doors were open, and heavy machine guns were trained directly on Cale's men. The cavalry hadn't just arrived. The war had arrived. The sound of the helicopter blades chopping the air was a physical force, flattening the grass and whipping Elena's hair across her face. Dust and pine needles swirled in a blinding vortex. "Drop your weapons!" a voice boomed from the lead chopper's loudspeaker, magnified to godlike proportions. Cale's men didn't wait to be told twice. Faced with the heavy machine guns mounted on the hovering aircraft, their loyalty to a paycheck evaporated. They dropped their rifles and threw their hands up, cowering under the wash of the rotors. But Victor Cale was a man who knew that surrender meant a slow, painful death in a basement somewhere. He didn't drop his hands. He ran. He sprinted toward his SUV, diving for the driver's side door. "He's getting away!" Elena screamed, pointing. Landon raised his gun, his hand shaking from blood loss. He fired 2 shots, but they went wide, kicking up dirt near Cale's feet. Landon groaned, his knees finally giving out, and he slumped against the side of the getaway car. I can't!" Landon gasped, clutching his bleeding side. Cale was in the car. The engine roared to life. He was going to escape, regroup, and come back for Toby. He would come back for everyone Elena loved. Elena looked at Landon, broken and bleeding on the ground. She looked at the gun he had dropped. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She acted. Elena snatched the gun from the gravel. She had never fired a weapon in her life, but she had watched Landon. Grip tight. Aim. Squeeze, don't pull. She ran toward the moving SUV. "Elena, no!" Landon shouted weakly. Cale saw her in the rearview mirror. He slammed the car into reverse, intending to crush her. Elena rolled to the side, the tires missing her by inches. She scrambled to her feet as the car spun around to speed down the driveway. She leveled the gun at the back tire. For Toby. For Landon. For the dollar. She pulled the trigger. The recoil jarred her shoulder, but the bullet hit the rubber. The tire exploded. The SUV swerved violently, the rim digging into the gravel. Cale lost control. The heavy vehicle fishtailed, skidded off the driveway, and slammed nose first into a massive oak tree with a bone-shattering crunch. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. Silence returned to the clearing as the mercenaries from the helicopters fast roped down, securing Cale's men. Elena walked toward the wrecked SUV, the gun still in her hand. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Victor Cale stumbled out of the wreckage. Blood was streaming from a gash on his forehead. He fell to his knees, dazed, looking up to see Elena standing over him. He looked at the gun, then he looked at her face. He didn't see a waitress anymore. "You?" Cale wheezed, coughing up blood. "You're nobody." "I'm the woman who just ended your career," Elena said coldly. Landon's men swarmed in, zip-tying Cale's hands behind his back. A medic rushed to Landon, but he waved them off, limping over to where Elena stood. He looked at the wreck, then at Elena. "You shot the tire," Landon said, a look of pure awe on his pale face. "I missed," Elena admitted, her adrenaline crashing, making her knees weak. "I was aiming for his head." Landon laughed, a wheezing sound, and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her forehead, leaving a streak of soot on her skin. "Remind me never to make you angry again," he whispered. 6 months later, the Velvet Room was closed for a private event. The interior had changed. The stuffy old money decor was gone, replaced by sleek modern lines and warm lighting. It looked sharper, dangerous, and more alive. Elena walked through the dining room. She wasn't wearing a uniform. She was wearing a tailored white suit that cost more than her old apartment building. Her hair was cut in a sharp bob, and on her finger, a massive diamond ring caught the light. She wasn't just the manager, she was the owner. Landon had gifted her the deed to the restaurant as a wedding present. The Velvet Room was now the neutral ground for the city's underworld, a place where business was conducted under the watchful eye of the Queen. "Mr. Joyce is waiting in the office," the new floor manager said respectfully as Elena passed. Elena smiled. "Thank you, James." She walked to the back office. Inside, Landon was sitting at the desk. looking over shipping manifests. He looked healthy, the scars on his ribs the only reminder of that night in the woods. Toby was sitting on the sofa, playing a video game on a new tablet, looking robust and full of life. The experimental treatment had worked perfectly. Landon looked up as she entered. His eyes softened, that steely gaze melting into warmth reserved only for her. "How is the floor?" he asked. "Busy. The governor is at table 4. "He loves the risotto," Elena said, walking around the desk. She sat on the edge of the desk, crossing her legs. "I was thinking," Elena said, "about that first night." Landon groaned playfully. "Are you ever going to let me live that down?" "No." Elena smiled. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, framed object. It was the dollar bill. The dirty, crumpled, grease-stained dollar he had left her. She placed it on the desk in front of him. "I had it framed," she said. Landon looked at it. "Why?" "It's a symbol of my arrogance." "No," Elena said softly. "It's a reminder. It reminds me of what I'm worth. And it reminds you that you can't buy me." Landon stood up. He placed his hands on her waist, pulling her close. "I don't want to buy you, Elena," he murmured, leaning in until their foreheads touched. "I just want to serve you. For the rest of my life." "Good answer," Elena whispered. She kissed him. It wasn't the kiss of a terrified victim or a fake fiancé. It was the kiss of a partner, an equal, a survivor. Landon pulled back and looked at the framed dollar. "You know, technically, since you returned this, I still owe you a tip." Elena laughed, a sound that filled the room. "Don't worry, boss. You can work it off." She hopped off the desk and walked back toward the door, pausing to look back at her husband and her healthy brother. "I have to get back to the floor," she said, her eyes flashing with a fierce, happy light. "Dinner is served." She walked out, the heavy oak doors swinging shut behind her. Elena Corves had once chased a dollar into the rain. Now she owned the storm. And that is how a single dollar bill toppled an empire. Elena proved that dignity isn't about how much money you have in your pocket. It's about how much fire you have in your heart. She refused to let the world tell her what she was worth. And in the end, she didn't just survive the game, she changed the rules. What would you have done if you were in Elena's shoes? Would you have kept the dollar and walked away? Or would you have chased him into the rain? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.